Hey everyone. Hey everyone. We are going live. Hello, hello. Michelle from AAM here. All right. Okay. Give you all a moment or two to pop on. Please say hello if you're with us. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know who's with us, where you are streaming in from. Would be nice to know. How'd you heard about tonight? If you're an activist or a vegan, you can say what you'd like to say about that. And yeah, thank you all for waiting. I know we're starting just a little bit late because Dr. Heath was just out of surgery, which is what happens when you are a veterinarian for sure. So we're excited about her presentation tonight and glad that you are all here to join us. So I'm going to introduce our program now. So greetings, animal allies. Welcome to another AAM live stream designed to help you become a more knowledgeable, effective, and outspoken advocate for animal liberation. Tonight is about zoonotic diseases, animal exploitation, and bridging the divide between activists and veterinarians. You'll have the opportunity to ask anything of vegan veterinarian Dr. Crystal Heath. And my name is Michelle Gramberg. I'm your moderator. I'm a mentor and team member with Animal Activism Mentorship. AAM is a multinational program supporting seasoned as well as new fledgling activists. Our mission is to empower activists to reach their full potential and equip them with the tools, community, and resources they need to boldly participate in our global animal liberation movement. Founded in 2020, AAM offers a free 3-month mentorship program which pairs experienced activists with aspiring activists. Additionally, we offer free educational online programs like this one. We have a podcast called the Animal Liberation Hour, and we host large-scale in-person activism events around the country. Stay tuned. I'll have some more announcements at the end regarding those. So if you're interested in applying to become a mentor or a mentee or want to get involved or to donate, please visit our website, animalactivismmentorship.com. So, we will be taking questions after in the middle of our presentation and at the end. So you're then welcome to place them in the chat. You're welcome to comment as we go. Please keep your comments kind and respectful and generally on topic. Okay. Now I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Crystal Heath, a 2012 UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine graduate. She grew up in a rural agricultural area, was vice president of her 4-H club, and even campaigned for Grand National Rodeo Queen. But she is now a vegan and animal rights activist. Since graduating, she has spent her career helping homeless animals in shelters and general practice. Dr. Heath volunteers abroad to help animals overseas, winning a Jefferson Award for volunteering in Fiji. She believes in advancing compassionate care for all species on this planet. She advocates for One Health, the idea that human, planet, plant, animal, and environmental health are all interconnected, and believes in confronting the corporations and institutions that stand in the way of advancing the compassionate care of all species on this planet. She is also on the board of LEAP, Leaders for Ethics, Animals, and the Planet, known as the humane alternative to 4-H and FFA. Gosh, so much there. All right, Crystal, if you're all ready, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you so much for having me. And thank you all for coming. And I don't know how this works with questions and stuff, but maybe people can post questions in the chat and then I can get to them when I get a little break.
I'll make sure to read them to you.
That would be awesome. So without further ado, I'll kind of get started. And I don't know if you all have been following the whole Seaquarium story, but I think this story is really a good example of sort of the issues that we run into with animal advocacy. I think there's a lot of questions like who would work at a facility like this? Could we ever partner with people who work in facilities like this? Why are vegans going after aquariums and zoos when animal agriculture is such a bigger issue that we should be addressing? And I was kind of pulled into this because a colleague of mine actually was a veterinarian here at Miami Aquarium. And it was interesting. She was worried, even reaching out to me at first, because she was worried that I would judge her for having worked in a facility like this. And I was like, no, I'm not judging you at all. Like, and it's so interesting. And I think a lot of activists don't understand is the zoo vets are so progressive. Like, they're so on our side. I have had so many zoo vets reach out to me and support what I'm doing. And they're like, I'm vegan. I'm an animal rights activist too. I volunteered for PETA before I got involved with this, but I have to keep it quiet because if I start being outspoken about this, I won't be able to work in the industry and I won't be able to help the animals. And I want to help the animals in these facilities. And I can't do that if I out myself. So this is the situation here. And so we had actually multiple veterinary staff reach out to us about the situation at Seaquarium. And one of our volunteers is a veterinarian who had been advocating for Lolita, the orca that was in the tank, for 25 years. So since she was 7 years old, and now she's a veterinarian, she's been advocating for Lolita. And Lolita was like the reason she became a veterinarian. And now it's like coming to a head. It's maybe finally closing. I don't know. We're like, it's not certain. And lately, in the most recent thing that kind of came out last night on the news was that the USDA just released a report talking about how the staff were intimidated by the managers at the dolphin company. They were telling them not to talk to the USDA inspectors. They actually were recording the staff when the USDA would come in and question them and do their inspections. The dolphin company managers were recording them the whole time, so they felt very uncomfortable. They had all signed NDAs to work for this company, and there was a lot of bullying, harassment, retaliation. Anybody who started voicing concerns about the care of the animals were either forced out, fired, and so it creates this situation where these people got involved because they thought, okay, this is a new era for Miami Aquarium. A new company is taking over. Change is going to happen. So we're all going to jump in and we're going to like help the situation and these animals. And then they realized they couldn't. All of the people who started wanting to change things were pushed out. The managers were like, no, you will do it our way or the highway. And they had this practice of actually cutting the food on the animals so that they would perform better, which is such an antiquated thing. Like, whenever I hear that, I think, oh, that's just animal rights activist propaganda. That's not what zoos are actually doing anymore. But this is what this company was doing. They were cutting the food to get these animals to perform better and maybe even to save money. And then you create this weird situation happened where the managers started saying, oh, we're going to change now. Like, after the first USDA reports coming out that were very negative and told them exactly what they needed to do to change things. They needed to buy more diagnostic equipment. They needed to hire more staff. They thought, okay, like, finally some change is going to happen. They're going to make the changes that they need to make. But they didn't, and they kept dragging things on, and animals were dying, and people were quitting, and people were being forced out. And it got worse and worse and worse until this most recent situation. The USDA report shows this sea lion Bud was very sick with kidney disease. And I knew about this, from months ago. I knew Bud was suffering and ailing, and the staff, everybody was very concerned about Bud, and they didn't have the staff to take care of him. They didn't have the equipment to take care of him, to get the stuff that he needed. The dolphin company was not paying their bills. They did not pay their laboratory diagnostic bills. They didn't pay their suppliers. And so they couldn't buy the medications that they needed. They couldn't order the diagnostics that they needed because the laboratory had cut them off, and the staff was scrambling to open new accounts. So this is a horrifying situation. And nobody at this point wanted to abandon the animals. It's like, what do? You had the USDA is here. And if you read the reports, it's very clear the staff is like, help us confiscate these animals. You know, we can't care for them here. They need to go somewhere else. Ultimately, though, the USDA was going to confiscate Bud and several other animals, the Meanie, who's a dolphin, and Aries, another dolphin, and 3 macaws, and they didn't. They delayed, and Bud ended up passing away because of it. And so here's the situation. It really highlights the problem with the USDA. Even USDA inspectors who wanted to help, who wrote down all of the right things in their report, somehow the powers that be, when animals are owned by a corporation, it's hard to take action because they have a team of lawyers. They are so powerful, they can pull strings. But when animals are owned by an individual, like I see this in shelters, you have one individual who's like hoarding a bunch of dogs and cats, and the law comes down hard on them. Those animals are confiscated right away. But here, the dolphin company, a wealthy, powerful corporation who is literally hoarding animals that they can't take care of, housing them inappropriately, and the USDA, and is violating the USDA, and nothing can be done. And they are in violation of Florida's animal cruelty laws as well. We wrote a statement that's 8 pages long, and it details exactly the violations of Florida's animal cruelty law, which does not exempt fish. And we argue that because the water is contaminated, the fish's eyes are being damaged, they're getting sick. A lot of these animals who are in the USDA report are suffering from kidney disease, respiratory disease. So it's a clear problem of water contamination. And so that's denying them adequate shelter and sustenance. And they're failing to take action. So this just really highlights the whole problem with the system. Even though it's not a farm animal thing, it deals with the USDA, the problems with the USDA not being able to take action when animals are owned by a very powerful corporation. So I think that's the importance of the story, but it also shows the systems that get these good people who wanted to help animals wrapped up into causing animals harm. And them also being afraid to reach out even to me for help. And this is what we see time and time again when veterinarians are in a situation and see animals in distress. They can't reach out to animal rights activists because they're worried that they will be attacked themselves for participating in this system. They can't reach out to their fellow colleagues. And this is another concern that many veterinarians have reported to me. I can't talk about this because then I won't ever be able to be hired in the industry again, and I won't be able to help the animals. And it's like, well, you can't help the animals as it is, can you? So we need to give them another option. And that's kind of why I founded my organization, Our Honor, is we're kind of a bridge between activists and veterinarians. And hopefully what I really want to do is tell you guys what you need to do to be more welcoming for veterinarians who are working in these systems so that they can talk to you about these things, report concerns, and you can partner with them to address these issues without outing them, because they need to be able to continue working on the inside, reporting these things, but they need somebody to report to and who will take action and address these issues. So we created Veterinarians Against Miami Seaquarium. We're encouraging activists to reach out to their own veterinarians, put this sign in their office in a sign of solidarity. But hopefully Miami Seaquarium will be over in a couple of days. We will see though, because their lawyers are fighting back. And so it'll be a huge battle. But yeah, I came from 4-H. I raised goats. I never ended up killing any of my animals, and I trained horses too, and I competed in dressage. And so a lot of activists, when they see these photos of me on horses, sometimes I'll post a memory on my Facebook page because I have very fond memories of riding horses, and it taught me a lot about horses and that whole thing. But I don't ride horses anymore. But I still have many friends who do ride horses, and they don't see anything wrong with that. And that's kind of like, but I also think horse people are sort of like the zoo vets, like they're such allies. And we gotta partner with them a little bit better. And I think not vilify them as much. Like, let's work together, because we do have a lot of horses who are race horses right now who will need homes. There's not enough homes for them as it is. This horse here is a ex racehorse that I trained to do dressage, and we competed until she was retired. And she was a horse who I could not turn her out in pasture or with other horses, because she would hurt herself and she'd get in fights with other horses. So she had to be kept in a paddock by herself, and she's in a very big paddock, and she loved to work and to ride. And so I didn't feel like it was necessarily a bad thing. And I was taking this individual who needed exercise, who enjoyed it, and I was giving her this outlet. Competition wise, I did have some, towards the end, some ethical quandaries about that. I'm like, is this really in her best interest? Is it stressful for her any way? Wouldn't she just rather go on trail rides? Is that being her form of an infringement? And I think towards the end, yes, definitely. But what are we going to do with all of these horses that need homes? And I think if we could partner with current horse riders and give some of these horses options, because so many horses are going to slaughter right now, and we need to rescue them and do something. And then maybe we can revise the whole equestrian field with this. So you might have known of the issue of Cedar the goat. And this, since I was a 4-H'er, I'm very familiar with this whole story. And it really speaks to my own situation in 4-H. So this girl, she didn't want to sell her 4-H goat Cedar to slaughter. And she'd grown up to love Cedar, and she suffered extreme consequences for failing to go along with this system. Police were called. They went on a 500-mile hunt to see Cedar, and they took him directly to the slaughterhouse with no due process of the law. And they even got the Attorney General of California to try to sue the family. And the fair tried to make the child out to be this villain and the mom out to be this villain. They are scofflaws. They weren't following through with their contract, and they're placing the fair and the 4-H's interests above compassion and respect for the child's change of heart and moral growth. And if this child were to go on to veterinary school, she would see this same mentality repeated as I saw in the veterinary profession. And so Miami Aquarium 4-H veterinary school, I'll highlight the same pattern and structures that lead us to betray our conscience and harm the most powerless members of society. And so it's like this little girl, she's not evil because she was participating in 4-H. She did it just like I did. I got involved with 4-H because I loved animals. And it's like when you're a rural kid and you grow up in this area and all your neighbors are in 4-H, this is what you do. And I could see how I was so close to like participating in one of these market projects just because I was so socialized to it, but I just knew I couldn't. But if I was in one of those families that was a little bit more hardcore than mine, my family was very hippie jippy. Now both my parents are vegans. Before they weren't. They cooked meat all the time and were quite foodies, but now they're both vegan, and my sister's vegan. So we kind of we were more open-minded, and other families just might not be. And so you might have seen this video of this girl showing her pigs, and it's so strange how she's looking at this camera so intensely and hunched over and everything. And I think this really describes how we can be conditioned to behave in really weird ways. It starts off being a good idea, like, oh, keep your eye on the judge. But in showmanship, it's not about showing your pig, it's about how well you show your pig. So in showmanship, it's this like weird display, this over the top display of showing. And this is where you get this really weird glare. And it ultimately goes so far away from the original purpose. And I think that just a lot of things start off making sense until it doesn't make sense anymore. And I think we see that in the veterinary profession too. There's a lot of things that we do that started off making sense, but we took it to such an extreme, it doesn't make sense anymore. And especially nowadays, after we know that there's better ways of doing things. And so archaeologist Stephen Mithin discovered that we gain the ability to empathize with other animals around 100,000 years ago. So empathy for animals is in our nature. And this new trait gave us the advantage of cooperative communication. This feeling kind of gave us insight into the movements of our prey, which weirdly made us better hunters. And when our survival depended on it, we could be strategic killers, but we were killers with emotional baggage. And seeing the suffering of these other animals weighs on our conscience. Something that I felt when I was an undergrad animal science student asked to cut off a baby sheep's tail with a hot blade with no anesthesia as part of my undergraduate animal science class. And this paper describes the socialization process that 4-Hers go through. And the authors say that the ability to avoid attachment was especially important as a milestone, signifying that these apprentices were no longer little kids. Several observed, as did one 17-year-old girl, that the little kids get more attached and more teary-eyed. And over the years, the 4-Hers learn how to manage their emotions through cognitive techniques, not to stifle or control them, but to change images, ideas, or thoughts in service of changing the feelings associated with them. One technique used in accomplishing this was not naming their animals. A 16-year-old boy who's raising pigs said, "Don't get close to them, don't name them. You're more attached to them when you name them." And he simply clapped his hands to get their attention and referred to this one or that one. Another said that there had simply been too many animals over his years in 4-H to come up with names. So he doesn't bother with names of any of his steers anymore. And Bradley Miller says, teaching a child not to step on a caterpillar is as valuable to the child as it is to the caterpillar. So what are we socializing these children to do? And I can't help but think how similar this is to medical education. And this is a brilliant essay written by a medical student and explores the pressures that exist within medical culture to harm those we should be serving. And medical students become less empathetic as they progress through their training. The process of medical education makes students acutely vulnerable to become complacent and susceptible to the pressures to cause harm. Physicians tortured people at Guantanamo Bay and committed mercy killings during Hurricane Katrina. And many students were taught how to do pelvic exams on women who could not consent. And during World War II, 7% of doctors became members of the SS compared to less than 1% of the general population. And she discovered that most doctors who participated in the Holocaust were regular people who believed that they were doing an unpleasant but morally correct and necessary job. New doctors rapidly came to view the culture of the concentration camps as an unchangeable fact. And I can't help but see that this is how veterinarians view what we do to animals in modern intensive feeding operations and in research laboratories. It's an unchangeable fact. And in medicine, we mislead ourselves by using euphemisms like sacrifice and euthanize when we refer to killing. We learn detached professionalism to avoid burnout. We are socialized to obey hierarchies and respect professors, residents, and attendings, and we trust their judgment and follow orders. And we have pride in our universities. We depend on them for our income and career advancements, and we invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into our education, and these things make us reluctant to publicly expose or even acknowledge the wrongdoing of our profession and our universities. And because our reputation depends on our university's reputation, it creates this vicious cycle. And concentration camp physicians adjusted to their new reality by extreme socialization, by watching their more experienced peers perform ramp selections and by commiserating with them afterwards. And I see veterinarians doing this too, accepting the way things are instead of working to change harmful systems. And so to cope, medical students become less empathetic and less ethical as they progress through medical school. They've even shown that fourth year veterinary students are less likely to use pain medication on animals. And the human medical profession is taking steps to mitigate this problem, but unfortunately, the American Veterinary Medical Association is doing the exact opposite. So I kind of want to talk about, this is how the human medical profession is dealing with this hidden curriculum that dampens empathy, and they're trying to repair that. So, and when you think about this, it's very similar to a cult. So how does somebody, so when people ask like, why aren't all veterinarians vegan? Like, people get so angry, even people who aren't vegan are like, how can veterinarians possibly not be vegan? You have to understand this conditioning process that went through and this socialization process. And so that's what makes it extremely challenging for animal rights activists and vegans to outreach to veterinarians, because you have to think of them as cult members. And I won't go through this in depth, but I want to kind of read the list of characteristics of a cult. And you have your charismatic leader and their skinny white women. And this is such the veterinary profession. You have these professors, and now the veterinary profession is becoming more female, thankfully. And we think, oh, that's a good thing. But it really sort of, it creates this idea in people's minds that everything's okay. And now you have a bunch of white women advocating for animal agriculture, making it seem legitimate and okay. It's no longer just these old white men doing this. Now young women are being the voices of the future of animal agriculture. This us versus them mentality. We see this so much in the veterinary profession. The idea like either one of us or you're against us. There's this battle. And one thing that really, I don't know if you all saw this New York Times article that came out, and that was calling for people to talk about how the cost of veterinary care and their experiences. The veterinary profession absolutely flipped out about this. Like, why aren't they talking about how hard it is for veterinarians and all of this? There's this very divide between clients and veterinarians, but we also have to kind of acknowledge there's some very similar characteristics that are emerging in animal rights activism too, and veganism. You have many vegans who refuse to be friends with meat eaters. And I think that's dangerous, because we have a saying in the veterinary profession and in the medical profession: nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. You can influence somebody if you're their friend, if they know that you care about them. And this is how I have influenced so many people to go vegan. And I never tell them, hey, you should go vegan, or like judge them for what they're eating. I just like talk about what I'm doing and my activism and why I care about these things. And I also care about their life too. And both my parents are vegan. I know classmates from veterinary school who have told other people, but they haven't actually told me yet, that they have gone vegan because of me, even though we don't even have a relationship. And so you don't have to necessarily tell people, oh, why are you eating that? Why are you vegetarian and not vegan? One of my colleagues actually tells the story of how she was vegetarian and she worked for a veterinarian who was vegan. And she found out that this veterinarian was vegan and was eating her Chobani yogurt and was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, I'm vegetarian, just like you. And all it took was this vegan veterinarian to kind of, you could tell she was like, you're not like me. Like, she just thought, like, you're not like me, you're eating yogurt. But she was too polite to say that. But the point got across without having to say any words, you know? So you don't necessarily have to shame people to do this. So other cult characteristics are a worldview shift that brings you under their sacred assumption. And we see this a lot in the veterinary profession. I won't go into this too much, but the idea of we're for animal welfare, not animal rights. Animal rights harms the veterinary profession is such a pervasive thought in the veterinary profession. We have all these thought-stopping cliches like that. The self-sacrifice of members. We have to take on so much debt. We have to work long hours. You have to work these absurd hours in order to learn this. We limit access to the outside world by all this hard work that we're all stuck in the office all of the time. We're kept in our little bubbles. This distinguishable vernacular, that's our medical lingo that we use, our euphemisms. And we exploit members' labor. This is so true if you're ever an intern. You have to volunteer a lot of time. If you're an intern after you graduate and you want to pursue a residency, you make $35,000 a year and work 100 hours a week. And then high exit costs. Of course, if you leave the profession, you've put in so much time and you've racked up hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And not even if you just leave the profession, if you, like me, start speaking up about animal rights, there's a risk that you will be deplatformed like I was and not being able to work in the profession ever again because of that. And the ends justify the means mentality. This is from animal experimentation to animal agriculture to the way that we are taught in veterinary school. Many schools still kill animals for students to learn, even though we know that there's better ways to do that. I never had to kill animals in veterinary school. Now surgery is my favorite part of school, of my profession. So I'd love to answer questions. I think that's a good stopping point for here. So if anybody has any questions.
Oh my gosh, Crystal, that was so great. Really good information. And sad, of course, not surprising to hear about how the empathy is conditioned out of, but we're going to bring it back. So we're stopping here for questions. We have more, but any questions from anyone with us, go ahead and put them in the chat. I think there might have been some questions earlier, so forgive me. It would be a lot easier if you could put them in again. I think Samuel might have a question. Deb, I don't know if you have a question for Dr. Heath. Go ahead and put it in the chat. Or a comment you'd like me to share. Anybody? So Deb asks, is there a registry of vegan veterinarians where we can find out if a local vet is vegan?
So many people ask me that, and it's like, no, because we're all so busy. We don't want to out ourselves as a we don't want to, no vets are seeking more clients. And so no, it's hard. So I know we're all so busy and nobody wants to put themselves out there as the vegan vet because we all have way too many clients as it is. And we don't want more people coming to us, but yeah. I will tell you though, I know a lot of veterinarians who became vegan because their clients came to them and brought pamphlets and information and started talking about these issues. So if every time you went to a vet, you dropped off some flyers from Our Honor, and especially Our Honor stuff, because we message to veterinarians in their language. And we have these statements that are drafted scientifically. Like if you go to humaneslaughter.org, we have a veterinary statement about pig slaughterhouse gas chambers. And now more than 150 veterinarians have signed on to it. The head signer is Jim Reynolds, who's a large animal veterinarian and teaches livestock medicine at Western University. It really points out the fact that there's no humane way to kill animals, especially pigs in our current system. And then our ventilation shutdown stuff. So yeah, look on Our Honor's website, tell your veterinarian about Our Honor and what we're working on, and share our social media posts with your veterinarian, and like hopefully we can get more veterinarians to be vegan animal rights activists.
All right, I'm just putting that website in the chat here for everyone, ourhonor.org. Samuel wants to know, I'm curious about fellowships, scholarships, and specific program tracks for vegan or sanctuary-minded prospective animal medicine students that are nursing or other.
There exist. No, sanctuary medicine is such an emerging field that really we need more people involved in. And oops, here. My presentation's away. Sorry, I have to go back to that. But
you have to find your presentation. Okay.
Yeah,
you'll find it.
There's so many opportunities, and like I think a lot of people are like, I want to go to vets. Like if you're talking about like wanting to go to vet school, people are like, I want to go to vet school, but I want it to be like easy, and I don't want to be placed in any ethically compromising positions. And that's just, you're not gonna get that experience. I'm sorry. You're going to have to stick to your guns. And unfortunately, there are a lot of vegans who enter veterinary school and then leave not being vegan anymore. And we can't let that, you have to have a good social circle of vegans to support you. Our Honor is here to support you in that. And people always want to go, what's the veterinary school I can go to where they don't harm animals? And that one doesn't exist really. There's some, like Western University doesn't do terminal surgeries. Tufts supposedly doesn't. But we're going to release soon all of the schools and what they do. But I would challenge, if you're a true activist and true vegan, go to the school that's the worst. Go to Iowa State, go to North Carolina. And if you change their system and complain, you're going to save so many more animals than just like the animals you would save by going to school that already doesn't do that stuff anymore. So we got to change curriculum, and that way you save thousands of animals in the future who would be killed or harmed by that curriculum. And, if you're a conscientious objector to some animal harm and they give you a hard time and they bully and harass you and give you a failing grade, I'm sure there's lots of lawyers who would love that. So like, do it. It's going to be challenging, like emotionally, but I mean, people have gone through a lot worse, I just think of like the first women to enter veterinary school and all of this stuff that they had to go through, all of these men giving them a hard time. And it's like, yeah, so vegans, we're like the first women into vet school. You're gonna be the only one in your class, or maybe there's a couple. But have that pioneer spirit of like being the first. In my class, we were like 25% of us were vegetarian. I was vegetarian in vet school. And there was like 2 vegans. So, you'll have some allies, but they won't be pure dietarily, if that makes sense. Any other questions?
Absolutely. Get in there and disrupt.
Yeah.
we could take maybe one more, and then if you want to go back to the presentation, strategies around changing the emphasis on the animal agricultural exploitation industries, aspects of veterinary education system in the United States and elsewhere.
They're working on that right now, actually. And I mean, there's so much money going into schools from the animal agriculture industry. And a lot of the schools who said, oh, we no longer do terminal surgeries anymore, like UC Davis, they still do them on pigs and cows, but for some reason that doesn't count. And we have to expose, like, oh, UC Davis said they're no longer using terminal surgeries, but they are still. And I'm encouraging students to tell their professors, hey, we're not going to euthanize these healthy animals after our surgery. We're going to rescue them. They're going to go to sanctuaries. And that's what students need to do. Like, say, there's no reason why we should euthanize this healthy animal. I want my animal to be saved and go to a sanctuary, and challenge them on that. And our honor is here to support anyone who wants to do that. So, anything else there?
Are there any ways to subvert the ag exploitation industries or government programs to achieve this?
I think telling people about it is the biggest thing. Like, we have a big program of doing FOIA requests to find out all of this. Like, learn how to do public records requests, which is really, really easy. And if you want to learn more about that, like, we have templates, and I think we definitely need to do more public records requests of schools to learn about their communications with the animal agriculture industry, and expose that to the media. Like, our story about the bailout money that these producers got. Jenny O is now up to $105 million that they've gotten from the bird bailout and for killing their animals in mass via heat stroke. Tyson Foods got $29 million of our money. And they also used ventilation shutdown to kill their birds. And I think taxpayers are horrified that this much of their money is going to these wealthy companies that are bringing in billions of dollars, whether they purchase their products or not. As I think most people who still eat meat think that they get their meat from humane farms, and they only purchase humanely raised animals. I think they would be pretty horrified to learn that millions of their dollars, their own hard-earned taxpayer dollars, are going to these corporations whose CEOs are making millions of dollars and who are treating their animals this badly. And that was a front page story of the New York Times just a couple of weeks ago. So we need more of those stories, and that's the best way to expose this.
Okay, do you want to hold off on the questions for now, Crystal, and go back, or do you want one more question?
If there's more questions, I'm happy to take them. Yeah.
Deb asks, aren't there enough sick animals in shelters, rescues, and sanctuaries to enable vet students to treat them instead of healthy animals?
Absolutely. We have way too many animals to treat as it is. And that's the thing. It's like, why are veterinary students being forced to kill animals in veterinary schools when there's so many animals that need our help? And many veterinary schools who have decreased the number of animals they kill for education have turned to teaching their students on shelter animals under the guidance of experienced surgeons. We obviously don't want to use shelter animals who are in a more vulnerable state as like just test subjects for students, but we can give them a very high quality, high standard of medical care without compromising, their care, giving them access to this. So yeah, I agree.
So when you're doing outreach, I mean, it gets out in the community and people don't know you're a veterinarian, do you lead with that when you're doing outreach, or do you start having a conversation? I mean, do you find that they listen more once you do tell them you're a veterinarian, if you bring that up because of your education and experience and clout, being a veterinarian, or?
Well, it helps in the media, like to get media attention on things. Like, oh, a veterinarian group was saying when I just meet people though, like I just try to connect with people as a person. And then if they're like, how do you know so much about this or whatever? I'm like, well, I'm a veterinarian. Like, but you know, it comes, I don't want to like, because there's a lot of people actually don't like doctors or veterinarians because we do have a tendency to be like, well, I'm a doctor, so I know better than, which isn't true. Like, just because you're a doctor doesn't mean that you know more about any subject than somebody else, because your area of expertise might not be their area of expertise. So a pro farmer, if I'm talking to somebody who produces pigs and I lead with like, I'm a veterinarian, they're like, what kind of veterinarian are you? Like, you know, that's not going to play well. But if I like talk to them, like I care about their job and what they're doing, and I'm asking them questions about it, I think people care. Like, if you're being curious and you're asking people, you know, about themselves, that is a better way to connect with people than being like, I'm a veterinarian, so you should listen to me. Like, nobody cares what your title is, especially when you're not
I
learning.
care.
So,
Yeah, I like that. Thank you very much. Okay, so that's all the questions for the moment. So you can go ahead. We'll hold off. We'll get more questions from all you guys later. Okay.
okay. And are we going till 5 or how late are we going till?
Well, it's already almost 8 o'clock here, so
Yeah.
yeah, same thing.
Yeah. So
Yeah, you can keep going. I mean, as long as that's
yeah,
okay with you.
okay. Yeah, we can. I mean, I have a lot, but we don't have to go through all of it. So
Okay.
this thing, since we just talked about cults, I was going to talk about how do you prevent yourself from getting indoctrinated into a cult, because nobody is like goes in and is like, I want to be part of a cult. It, like, the veterinary profession sounds like a good idea. It starts off being a good idea, and then and a good thing, and people become veterinarians and seek out going to veterinary school or medical school because it's a good thing. They don't realize that there's some very culty things about it, and you get slowly worked into that. And it's there's so many things that are very culty. Like, I have been involved in various fitness programs that became very culty, or yoga things, and equestrian sports, very, very culty, like that whole environment. And it's this situation where you have somebody who's like a hero. And I think of the equestrian world is a perfect example of this. You had all of these Olympians, like men in positions of power, who were Olympians, everybody idolized. And I remember going to clinics put on by Olympians, and everybody like so nervous, like, oh my God, he's so wonderful, he's so talented, you know, worshiping them. Do not do that. Like, if you have anybody who you're like, oh my God, this person's a hero, worshiping the ground that they're walking on, you have to, that's a sign. That's a sign that it's and you need to, anybody who you're like, oh, this is my hero, stop yourself and say, no, like, this person is a human being. They're not perfect. There are no heroes. There are no victims. There are no perpetrators. So kill your heroes and question them. If you are involved in something that is advancing for the greater good, you should be able to question everything that they're doing and talk about some of the negative things that they're doing. And if you, the second that you do that, you start being ostracized and attacked, that's when you know you have a problem. And this is what I found out in the veterinary profession. Ventilation shutdown, pretty horrifying thing. And I was like, well, the AVMA should reclassify mass killing of farmed animals via heat stroke as not recommended. Suddenly, I was attacked for saying this. And I've had similar situations of being in various organizations where a man, and this is true of the equestrian world too, these men, these Olympians, started romantically pursuing young equestrian women. And the way that you would be able to get opportunities to ride better horses was if you went along with this. And people think, oh, there is some cases where like these men are like forcing themselves onto these very young women. But there's a lot of cases where these women were idealized these men, and they were flattered by the fact that these men were giving them attention and opportunities. And so they went along with it, not realizing that they were abusing their power. They were being manipulated. There's this age difference. They were being taken advantage of until later when they realized, oh my gosh, I was being manipulated. And that was one of dozens of young women that this man was pursuing. And I was not special by any means. He was totally taking advantage of me. And this is true of any organization where you have a man in a position of power that everybody idolizes. You have to be super careful of that. So I love this quote from Hayao Miyazaki, and I love his movies. If you've seen like Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle, he has this quote that says, "You must see with eyes unclouded by hate, see the good in that which is evil and the evil in that which is good, and pledge yourself to neither side, but vow instead to preserve the balance that exists between the two." And I think we have to, as a movement, look at what are the good things that we're doing? What are the bad, harmful things that we're doing? The veterinary profession too. The veterinary profession is doing a lot of horrible things, but there are also really good people. Everybody involved in it is not necessarily evil because they're involved in it. They just have been led to believe that there's no other way. And how do we get them onto our side? We have to not view them as monsters, but view them as human beings. Most of them are really good people. There's always psychopaths. Like that's a reality of our world. But I don't think it benefits anybody to just assume that everybody is a psychopath, or that meat eaters are psychopaths. We shouldn't be friends with them. Because over time, if you make friends with people, you end up in the right circles, you make the right connections. I mean, politicians know this. It's all about who your friends are. And this is how you get into the rooms where you can make real change happen, is if you become friends with people in the right positions of power and you influence them, you make them realize, oh, vegans and animal rights activists are actually good people. They're not these weirdos. And it is possible to be vegan without, dying of protein deficiency. Most people still don't know that. You can tell them that to your blue in the face, but they don't believe it in their soul yet. So it's going to take some time. So please do not be one of those people who's like, I will refuse to be friends with somebody who eats meat. That's not how our movement's going to grow. We're going to stay at that 2% with that mentality. And here's a perfect example of this. This is Lisa Jones Ingle. She quit her work as a laboratory researcher. Now she works for PETA and she speaks out about laboratory research. Oh my God. And this is like, I was talking about this to somebody the other day. I know people who are neuroscientists who ended up leaving the field because they're like, my whole job was like working on rats, and this is not what I wanted to do. And so I ended up leaving the field of neuroscience to do something else. So there's this real like brain drain that's happening because people just, they have some sort of problem with it. And because the system relies on so much animal experimentation, people are leaving the field because they're like, this is not why I became a scientist, to just experiment on rats all day. And so they end up quitting and doing something more fulfilling, which really harms the field of science when we aren't shifting to better, forms of experimentation. But so she's really raising awareness about this as a former researcher. But unfortunately, like, she's being attacked by animal rights activists for her previous work. And this person says that's great, but frankly, she was a monster for years. How about not performing research on animals simply because it's cruel instead of only because they resemble us? Like, yeah, that's what she's saying. Like, why are you attacking her? And this person says, look at the way she's holding that monkey, evil personified. She's a bit late in her actions. Karma will prevail. And this person says, yeah, this is outrageous. Not only monkeys, but no living being deserves this kind of treatment. These people are not monsters. They are ruthless, stone-cold barbarians and sadistic cowards. They need to be severely punished. That's not going to make us any friends. And I think a lot of people who currently work in research are scared. They do see huge problems with these labs and the way things are run. And they've tried to reach out to the USDA, as the Miami Seaquarium people have. Nothing happens because the system's set up to protect the corporations, not the animals. And they can't turn to animal rights activists because they're worried that they're going to be attacked. So they have no one to turn to. And so I think we need to be a little bit more charitable, especially to those who are now out and outspoken animal rights activists. And I know many. Alice Broth is another. She was a former pig vet, and now she's a veterinarian, and she's regularly attacked by animal rights activists. When she's been in movies and she's speaking out about everything, and I can tell, like, it's psychologically distressing to her to have to go through this. And it's like our own movement is doing this to each other, to people who are really good activists. It's like you can never be perfect enough. And it's based in this idea of like purity culture. Like if you're not a vegan, if you're not pro-Palestine, if you're not like all of these things, if you don't check all the boxes, you are not one of us and you're ostracized, which creates this highly fractured movement, which is like instead, there's always the threat, the shame of like, oh my God, if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to be canceled by all of these vegans and all of these animal rights activists, which is just such a danger. Elie Wiesel, the Holocaust survivor and Nobel laureate, says, "We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented." But he also says, never allow anyone to be humiliated in your presence. So if you see somebody who's being attacked and bullied, even if you disagree with their stance, it's still never okay for them to be bullied and attacked. And I would encourage, if you're seeing somebody get attacked online, like reach out to them, say you support them, you're okay, and tell other people this is not okay what you're doing to this person, even if there's somebody who you don't agree with necessarily. So, oops, what happened to my slides? I'm not sure what's going on here. Oh, there's something. Okay. Let's see. Oh, here's I just talk about. Let's see. Is our honor, and we bridge the divide between activists and veterinarians. And I want to talk about institutional betrayal, institutional courage. Another way that we can stop this sort of mentality in these environments is to foster institutional courage. And this, in short, is supporting whistleblowers, creating systems to protect them, apologizing for wrongdoings, and taking steps to prevent harm from taking place in the future. And all of us can be agents for fostering institutional courage. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. But, you know, if I was to say, what does institutional courage look like in the veterinary profession? It would be apologizing to the animals for allowing them to be killed in mass via heat stroke, apologizing to the veterinarians who the AVMA has bullied and retaliated against and smeared, the veterinarians working for animal protection, and put steps in place so people can voice concerns without fear of retaliation. And it's so funny. There's this concept called radical candor by Kim Scott. I don't know if you're aware of this book called Radical Candor. And it's all about, like, you know, accepting feedback and stuff. And it's this plot and, you know, challenging directly and caring deeply. The opposite is not challenging directly and not caring. And in theory, what radical candor is you challenge somebody directly, but you care about them deeply. Sounds like a great concept, right? This is used by corporations, and it's used by people in a position of power. They say, oh, radical candor, such a great idea. It encourages people to start talking about their concerns. But what happens when you don't have institutional courage is those in power say, oh shit, this person with their ideas is going to challenge the power structure. So we got to make sure that that person doesn't advance. And the AVMA put on this whole like seminar about radical candor, and I attended it, and I'm like sitting there going, this is outrageous. When I've been banned from attending a symposium because of my beliefs, and I'm a member, and they prevented me from going to the Humane Ending Symposium. They prevented me from going to the legislative buy-in. And they didn't tell me why. They didn't even sign the email. So it's really funny. And I can take more questions if there's any more questions.
Well, there was a question a bit back here from Deb again, back to sort of animal research. Do most grants for animal research come from the government or private industry?
Numbers. You know, there's so much either way. I don't know. I just know that NIH is like billions and billions of dollars. And I know like Neuralink and those companies, but they also get a lot of government subsidies. So I don't know exactly the balance of it. But the great thing about the NIH is you can FOIA information from them. So that would be a good way to get info. And the media loves those FOIA documents. So.
Gotcha. Any other questions? Go ahead and write your questions in the chat if you have some other questions. And I mean, this is a little bit of a change of subject, but I don't know if you were gonna, do you get folks coming into your practice asking about transitioning their dogs or cats to a plant-based diet more now? I'm hoping the answer is yes or less, or do you ever bring it up? I mean, I guess you have to wait till it's their questions, and I know there's a lot of controversy, and that's one of those hot button discussions. What's your thoughts on that?
I personally feed my dog a vegan diet. I think it's great. I think it can treat a lot of medical conditions. So like dogs with itchy skin and different liver diseases, it can treat them. I do a lot of shelter and nonprofit work, so I don't really see clients that often. But I get a lot of people reaching out to me about it. So I think, yeah, it's great, but we also need more plant-based diets for dogs and cats, because there's hundreds of options for meat-based foods for dogs and cats. So, you know, it's such a challenge finding something that your animal will eat and they'll be healthy on. And if, you know, your dog doesn't like the 4 options of vegan food, you're kind of like out of luck. And if your dog or cat has kidney disease or something, or there's some disease where there's a prescription meat-based diet for it, but there's not a prescription plant-based diet for it, it's kind of challenging. So I'm like, you know, we live in an imperfect world. Don't feel bad if you can't feed your animal a plant-based diet, but in most cases, it's perfectly healthy and maybe even healthier to feed them a plant-based diet. So give it a try, go for it. That's what I say. But if they're getting sick, animals get sick on meat-based diets too. So you never know, are they sick because of that, or are they sick because of something else? And everybody, when they're on a plant-based diet and they get sick, most vets are being like, this crappy vegan diet probably is the reason sick. There's no way to prove it. I mean,
anecdotal. Yeah.
So it's kind of a tough situation, but you know, it's there. I see the biggest pet food I probably see the most problems with is blue buffalo. Anytime, like most of the people who come in and are like, my dog or cat has had diarrhea or vomiting, and I'm like, what are you feeding? They're like, blue buffalo, like half the time. So, you know, yeah, I tend to, if I have that bias the other way, your animal's sick and they're on blue buffalo, it's like, that's fine. Anyway, I'm probably gonna get sued for that, but
I was gonna say, anybody work for Blue Buffalo? Hopefully not on this on this live stream.
Out there saying what I'm saying right now about Blue Buffalo, that I think I'm pretty good. So.
Just making an observation. Don't sue us. Well, I will say too, my dogs have been vegan as long, not vegan, they've been plant-based as long as I've been vegan, and they have not had a single health problem. So again, who, right? So, okay, questions, a couple more questions here. What are the federally mandated laws on medical care for factory farms? Because that's a big question.
Like, I mean, there's the Animal Welfare Act, which, I mean, you could do like, there's there's very little protections for animals, and I think the best protections for animals are your state-based animal cruelty laws, which now a lot of states like California is trying to introduce. You know, when states that didn't have exemptions for livestock are now trying to introduce laws to exempt farmed animals from their animal cruelty laws, which is a danger. California is trying to do that right now. But the Animal Welfare Act is like, it's nothing. Like, it really isn't protecting the animals. And even in the seaquarium situation, they're like, well, they're giving Bud medication, so we can't take him because they're treating him. And the vets are like, but he needs diagnostics and stuff that he's not getting. And well, the one inspector's like, unless you're giving him IV chocolate, we can't do anything about it. They really have their hands tied. And even trying to get somebody to enforce state animal cruelty laws when it has to do with farmed animals is really tough. It's really easy when you have like one small farm and they're doing something bad. But if it's like a Cargill or a Smithfield, it's really, really hard. And I think we just need to do more. We need to partner with our animal control officers and start talking to them about this. Like, can you cite these places and be friendly about it? And I work with some animal control officers, and I brought this up before, and they're like, well, we're not sure, this is in our jurisdiction, and they've got so many other things to handle. But start having those conversations, know what your laws are, like document things and start filing complaints. And if you're curious about this, Animal Partisan is doing some amazing work on their legal strategy, which is to file these complaints when they see these, and they document cruelty in various jurisdictions, and it depends on what area you're in. So, you know, record the footage, partner with these groups. All animal advocacy groups need volunteers and help, and don't just be like, this bad thing is happening, do something about it. It's like, we've got enough bad things happening to do stuff about, so don't just present us with another one. Like, actually takes on some help with this, because all of our plates are full. But yeah, anyway, sorry, long answer, but
no, that's great. Thank you so much. What are some good canned statistics or anecdotes that are real head scratchers for veterinarians who are not on the animal rights journey?
oh, you know, there's the like, it's hard. It just depends on the person you're talking to. And I think the ventilation shutdown thing is just outrageous, because a lot of people don't realize it's still happening. They're sealing up barns, pumping in heat, and waiting for the animals to die. And it takes like 3 to 5 hours for the animals to die. And the AVMA says it's okay in constrained circumstances. And I think the fact that the places that are doing it, they're not small producers that don't have any other options. They could have put plans in place to use less humane or less cruel methods. And I know we're not about, like, I'm an abolitionist, like most people are abolitionists, but we can argue these things even from just like a fiscal conservative sort of welfarist perspective, like meet them where they are. We all think that this is bad. Why isn't there being more being done to stop this from happening? Sorry, just 1 second. Sorry, I need to move out of this place. But yeah, I think the fact that our corporations are getting millions and millions of dollars, these are wealthy corporations, like Genio took $105 million, while their CEO made $6 million, and they had $1 billion in revenue, and they killed their animals in mass heat stroke. Like, they have the resources to do to end the lives of their animals in less cruel ways at the very least, and yet the AVMA is pushing back. And the new draft of the guidelines for depopulation that the AVMA is coming out with is coming out shortly, and we think actually that what they'll do is they are going to make ventilation shutdown still a method to be used in constrained circumstances. They're not going to make it not recommended. So that will be a huge talking point. And it's like, at the very least, we should be encouraging these companies, these very wealthy companies, to use less cruel methods, but they're not.
Are you okay to continue, or are you sure? I like that you're taking us with you as you move about. That's great. And you're still giving us all this great information at the same time. You're so multitaskingly talented.
And everybody asks, like, what's the alternatives to ventilation shutdown? Well, high expansion oxygen-based foam, which they use in other countries. And if you're getting to the point where these large companies can't use better methods, like there's no alternatives, what is that really saying about the system that we built up? And especially, and why are we giving so much money to incentivize the system? Why not redistribute our public funds towards slaughter-free forms of food production? Like, I never even tell people go vegan because of this, because vegans are paying for this too. So I think when people hear the story, they instantly become disgusted by the whole system and don't want to support it with their money. But a lot of people who are not going to believe that you can't be healthy on a vegan diet, it'll start getting them thinking. Like, maybe they'll do some more research on their own. They'll start thinking about this. I think it just plants a seed of how horrifying this system is, where they're giving so much money to these very wealthy, powerful corporations, when meanwhile, like, how much is veterinary care for your dog and cat? Why is the medical care of farmed animals owned by powerful corporations being subsidized by your taxpayer dollars, while the cost of care for your dog and cat is so expensive and not being subsidized? At least shift there. Like, shouldn't $105 million go to support free spay neuter programs instead of making sure that Genio Turkey Store's CEO can make $6 million and he can kill all these birds with heat stroke? So backwards. I think just telling that story and be like, shouldn't veterinarians support a slaughter-free future? Should we start redirecting our investments towards slaughter-free food production and start it, like, get the conversation to how we produce food, not necessarily how people consume food. And I think that will really plant the seed for people just wanting to make their own changes in their consumption habits because of their disgust with this industry and these corporations. And it doesn't put them on the spot too, because when you put people on the spot and be like, you're a murderer because you're eating animals, you are part of the problem because you're eating animals, that makes people really defensive. Some people, like, it works on some people. Some people have gone vegan because of it. But that's like saying, I trained my dog by hitting him and he's very well behaved now, so everybody should hit their dog. And I think we have to view our words and the emotions that we incite in somebody this is violence. It can be violent. It can be when you're shaming people, that is a violent act, even though it's not physical. Our brain is an organ. So if you're causing somebody psychological harm, causing them to feel uncomfortable, yes, some discomfort is important. Sometimes we need to create a crisis in order to inspire change. But I think you can do it without humiliating people, without people making people feel defensive. And I think people are more inspired to do good work when there isn't this environment of shame and judgment and the threat of being ostracized and the threat of losing connection with your friends and your fellow activists. And if you say the wrong thing, or if you aren't perfect in your consumption habits, because this is like, you think of churches and like purity culture, and the same tactics that they use are sometimes what some of these groups are doing too. Yeah. If you aren't exactly perfect, you are at risk of being ostracized. And that creates such a fear and a toxic environment instead of this connection that ultimately we're going for. So
yeah, it just creates more division.
Exactly.
We have plenty of that. All that is good. So I know we'll probably wrap up in a few minutes, folks, but so maybe we'll take another question or so. We had a question here. Do companies like Purina contribute a lot of funding to vet schools?
Yes, absolutely. But Purina has a vegan diet, so I applaud them for that. But we would get free dog food for our dogs from Purina, Hills, Royal Canin. We had like this university program, and they would come and give talks, and there's all of these free talks. They come to our veterinary clinics and give us talks and lunches and stuff like that. So, and it also goes to show you how animal agriculture, like, yeah, they sell animal products. They want to keep the price of meat cheap. They want to keep the price of crops cheap. They have an interest in plant agriculture because that's their ingredient. So they want to ensure that crop agriculture flourishes. They also they're very much connected to the pharmaceutical industry. Some of the biggest customers of the pharmaceutical industry are livestock. We sell vaccines, medications to livestock. If the number of livestock animals that we raised decreased, that would hurt the pharmaceutical industry. It would hurt the crop industry, the feed crop industry. So it's very much this web that's interconnected. And we have to show all of these industries that the future is slaughter-free food production. They better prepare for it. And what I envision is those very powerful executives of those pharmaceutical companies, the livestock companies, the feed crop companies, they have to realize that this is where things are going. And how are they going to lobby government to support this transition? Redirect funding instead of supporting slaughterhouses. All these slaughterhouses have been built for free, pretty much from government grants, paid for by taxpayers. How can we get them to lobby for that money to go to support slaughter-free production? Because this isn't sustainable. They're not going to have the labor. They're not going to have the land to grow the crops on. With climate change, crops aren't going to grow. So it's a challenging situation. I kind of went on a tangent there.
Very much so. Yeah, it's not going to change overnight, but okay, we have a few comments here and a question. Just wanted to say that I so appreciate Dr. Heath using our platform as a vet to make a change for animals in spite of the pushback. Great. And a ventilation shutdown video is what made me start following the Direct Action Everywhere page. Extremely powerful and important to share that information. And another person also says, Samuel says, hearing about ventilation shutdown during COVID played a role in my journey. So that is a powerful example to share. People would have no idea that's happening. And
I
then
know vets who've said, like, yeah, I won't eat pigs anymore because of that. And I hope maybe we can also tell them, well, poultry birds are victims too. So we should eat those either.
And the question from nerds like us, is there an ethical way to get blood for non-human animal surgery?
Yes, I think so. And this is interesting. There, I feel like at UC Davis, we had a really ethical program for getting blood. And we had students, we all had dogs. And um, if dogs, a lot of dogs are so happy to go to the vet clinic because they get attention and they get loved on. There's lots of dogs who are very freaked out and don't. But the dogs who liked it and got enjoyment out of it, and they're stuck, like you can poke them, they don't care. They're like happy. They like,
Mm.
and there's lots of dogs who like loved going and giving blood. Like, I know it's kind of like ethically challenging, but I think that's the best scenario. It's like you have a dog who is has an advocate, somebody who loves them and is looking out for their best interest, and also wants to help other animals. Like they can go to a vet clinic, donate blood, store that blood, and use it for other animals. I mean, I'd like to see a future where we can, and I think this future is coming very quickly. Like the way we can make slaughter-free milk, we can make slaughter-free blood. I'm sure, non-animal based blood that we
Mm.
can, probably precision fermentation or some sort of protein mechanism where we won't have to have animals donate blood. But I mean, I think the future of experimentation in general, I would like to see it go that way and go like clinic based, and the only animals we experiment on, we do it for their benefit. They'll have an advocate. And I would love to see more human experimentation happen. Like
Mm.
we send people to wars and up into outer space, and it's like you should be a hero to donate your body to experimentation and test out new drugs and things. But we can do it ethically, I think. And we're not even doing human experimentation ethically. I've had people who sat on institutional review boards who are involved in approving human experimentation, and they tell me horror stories. And I know so many vets have reached out to me who sat on IACUC committees for animal experimentation, who voiced concerns about the experiments that were happening, and they were pushed out off of the IACUC committee. And it creates, anytime you have a jury of people, it's like the worst idea, the most unethical thing gets approved, because it's like nobody takes responsibility for it. It's the group agreed, so it's no individual responsibility, and that's the problem with these whole systems.
Mm.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to ask you two questions together here, because it sort of goes to the same. But for Neil, is there a version of Our Honor in Canada that you know of? And Dina asks, how can we get your pamphlets or info for our local vets?
Yeah, reach out to me, info@ourhonor.org. And we have veterinarians in Canada. Like we're kind of worldwide.
Mm.
And we don't have like set chapters. I wanted to like create sort of a chapter system, but it's the problem with the vets is like we're so busy as it is. We don't have time to like be a chapter leader of a thing. So we also like take activists to help us too. So if you wanted to sort of maybe head and facilitate something, maybe we could like work on that sort of thing where you can help vets in Canada get together and organize and take on various actions and stuff. But yeah, some of our best veterinarians are in Canada. There's some really good ones who keep signing all of our petitions and everything.
Love it. Go Canada.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe we should wrap up. I don't see any other questions. So without any other questions, and since we've been on for a while here, I guess just Crystal, I'll throw it back to you for one more moment. Do you have any final words that you want to leave us with? Maybe some words of hope?
Yeah, I think one thing is whenever you're like considering like of what kind of vet would do that, like work in a zoo or work on a farm, or whenever somebody's doing something, you're like, person is doing something very wrong. Instead of viewing them as like a monster, I would just say, if you lived their life and had their experiences, you would probably do the same thing. And if to say that you wouldn't is to say that you are somehow inherently better than them, or somehow they're inherently worse than you, which just sets up this idea of hierarchies, which is like the very thing that we should be against as vegans. We're against speciesism, we're against hierarchies of all forms, and we should be against the idea that some people are morally superior to others. So I don't think of myself as morally superior to other people just because I am vegan, but I know many people do. And I think that that's a problem, because that just sets up this idea of they are worse than us. And I've even seen vegans say the death penalty for those people. It's like, what kind are we animal rights activists? Humans are animals too. Like, why are we advocating for the caging and killing of our fellow human beings? Animal rights activists should include all of that. So I would just say, have empathy for your fellow human being, and always question if someone's being ostracized, like reach out to them and help them and stop that sort of thing from happening. Stop the canceling of other people. It is a dangerous, dangerous mentality. And instead, we need to just, join together and support each other and treat each other with dignity and respect. No matter whether they're vegan or not, everybody deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. So thank you all.
I love it. I love those words. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's channel all our frustrations and anger productively.
Exactly.
Passion across the board. So I'm going to wrap up with just a couple of announcements, and really appreciate that everyone is here, been here with us. Please consider, oh wait, first I want to announce our New York City Convergence is coming up May 24th through June 3rd, and our Ohio occurrence is August 1st through the 4th. Both of those are 2024. If you want more information, you'll find all the information on our Facebook page and on our website. Please check out our previous workshops here on our YouTube channel, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel while you're here. And of course, follow us on social media. Please consider becoming a patron by following AAM on Patreon. Your donations allow AAM to continue to provide free educational resources for activists, which ultimately saves more animals. So that wraps up another AAM workshop live stream program here. Thank you, Crystal, for your time and wisdom so much. I know you're busy, a busy vet, and thank you all for being here and the tireless work you're doing for the animals. If you're interested in becoming a mentor or a mentee or want to get involved, please reach out to us. Check out our website. So until next time, thank you, everyone. Stay strong and live vegan.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.